Hi, everyone. Sorry about the delay. So hopefully everyone can hear my voice. This is Walter Rowland with MessageGears, and we're thrilled to be speaking to you guys today about one of our favorite topics, which is talking to brands and talking about experiences with building cross-channel marketing data strategies. If you're like a lot of the clients that we talk to, your customer data may not be as accessible as you'd like, and you may experience issues like information stored across multiple disparate systems, inconsistent customer and prospect data, and time-consuming segmentation processes. So that's really the focus of today's webinar, and we're lucky enough to have the expertise of Aptitive and our friends there on the line today. In terms of agenda, we're going to get you guys a little bit more familiar with your speakers. Then we'll go through some trends and pain points that we've seen across the industry, and then we'll dig into how to solve and how to plan. We'll leave you guys with some action items, and we'll have time, I hope, for Q&A. So first of all, I'm Walter Rowland with MessageGears. And Cierra, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Cierra Valor from Aptitive. We are a data and analytics consulting firm based out of Chicago. We work with nationwide clients to try to get your data in a nice, usable fashion. I also work with the marketing analytics practice, where we really specialize in understanding the business problems around data and how to solve those problems with technology.
Awesome. And I'm Walter Rowland. I run our growth team here at MessageGears. For those of you guys who are not familiar with our firm, we are the only campaign orchestration and engagement platform that connects directly to your data. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to us. Brands that have invested in modern data infrastructures, such as some examples we'll be giving you guys today, we're purpose-built for those organizations, and we are able to directly connect to those investments and enable brands to send highly relevant communication via email, push, SMS, leveraging that underlying technical data stack. So I thought we'd kick off a little bit with just describing what's going on out there. I think a lot of us know, and we experience this every day, but consumers are demanding more personalized, data-driven experiences today than ever before. I always say I think there's an implied contract between the consumer and the brand. Consumers are pretty savvy. They know that brands have a lot of data about them. There's an implied contract, really, between the brand and the consumer to provide that data, and the consumers expect you to leverage it as a brand. There's a pressure to surprise and delight. And I think brands that are doing this the best are going to increase their share of wallet and generate, even more loyalty and devotion. And brands that fail at it are going to really leave with a bad impression and frankly lose customer loyalty. Customers want hyper personalization, they want frictionless experience, and they want convenience. The good news is, marketers know this. This isn't new information. We run regular surveys here at MessageGears, and this is pretty fresh data with respect to the ecosystem that we know a lot about, which is the email marketing landscape. And marketers really know that the priorities for them are around generating that improved data-driven experience for the consumer. So you'll see marketers are focused on pretty equally on things like improving segmentation and targeting, utilizing real-time data, greater use of analytics to optimize communication. There's the attribution piece, and really right there at the bottom, but fairly equal to everything else, is this centralizing of our customer data and making it actionable. This came from a relevancy group study that was recently released. And, the good news here is that we all recognize that data-driven experiences are critical to surprise and delight the consumer. Now, of course, not everyone is doing this great, and this is one of our favorite stories that we like to tell. It actually came from a colleague here at MessageGears. What happens when brands fail at the centralization of customer data and making it actionable in real time? So here's a story of a Beyonce concert here in Atlanta, where my colleague researched the tickets and purchased them and was really excited to go. But he was, in subsequent days after he made those ticket purchases for him and his wife, he continued to get inundated with messaging from the brand. And it was messaging that made him nervous because he'd already purchased those Jay-Z Beyonce tickets, and yet he continued to get communication indicating that the tickets were still available and he hadn't purchased them. And that ultimately actually made him nervous that he hadn't actually succeeded in purchasing the tickets, and really made it a bad experience for him. Now, what should have happened here ideally? In a perfect world, this would have been emails that were offering him seat upgrades, or a premier VIP experience, or discounts on merchandise, or dinner offers, or similar concerts, or promotions with transportation providers like Lyft or Uber. Those kinds of experiences would have been much preferable to what happened here, where ultimately it really left a bad impression with him and made him nervous to ever use that particular ticket provider again. And Cierra, I know that you've got some examples as well. What are you seeing out there that's kind of a good example and a good story?
So we actually just did some work for a global cosmetics company, and they were really trying to target single versus repeat customers. And they had some repeat customers who, for instance, if you're at all familiar with cosmetics, would buy the same foundation every 6 weeks religiously. And then they saw those same customers would not show up for 12 weeks. So they wanted to be able to send a personalized email to those customers, make sure that they don't email them back to back with other promotions, and incentivize them to rebuy that foundation that they know they love. So this email mock-up kind of on the slide here is showing you, if you had that foundation and you had the knowledge to know that that's exactly what they buy when they buy it, then you can send an email to incentivize that purchase, giving them a 10% off discount for their favorite. The other thing that we saw them do is say, hey, we want to actually upsell these customers. So let's suggest products that they haven't tried, that we know they haven't tried, because we have their behavior and product purchase data.
It's a really cool story. And so I want to repeat again the transition for everybody. The notion of treating everyone the same with the 30% off versus the very targeted communication to Laura Jane here, specific to her interests in the products that she enjoys, and relevant to the last time she had purchased those products through this particular brand. So really cool story, kind of the holy grail of data-driven marketing. But I think we need to recognize, as a group, and that's really the purpose of today's topic, this isn't easy. Marketers are really struggling to deliver these highly personalized, data-driven experiences. It's a challenge to meet the ever-heightened expectation of the consumer in the data-driven world that we live in. There's a lot of setup involved, and frankly, marketers oftentimes don't know where to start and how to partner with IT and MarTech and engineering to kind of achieve this vision. So as you see in this next slide, this is some of the challenges from that same study we referenced earlier. So marketers are conscious of the priorities and the expectations that are upon all of us, but yet at the same time, we're cognizant of some fairly significant challenges that we're all faced with in terms of the struggle to automate things based on data-driven triggers, that sort of IT partnership for data extraction, which unfortunately is a fact of life for many brands, where they're having to forklift and move data around in a kind of a peer-to-peer way, which is pretty painful, and frankly something that we're trying to solve for. Analyzing results, managing offers across multiple campaigns and channels. Really, all of this is almost equally weighted, and at the root of it, is data, is a single source of truth for customer data that informs everything else that's going on. What's interesting about this data too is it hasn't changed much year over year. It's almost like marketers have been institutionalized and feel like this is just the normal state of affairs, which is tragic in a sense, and that's really part of the reason why Cierra and I are here talking to you guys today. Cierra, from the examples that you gave earlier, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there with brands that you're working with to be able to achieve this kind of personalization?
Well, there's always a million factors. I think the biggest thing that we hear from our marketing clients is that they're held back by the technologies they have available. They have a million great ideas, and they have all these strategies that they've put together to better target or segment their customers. But then the technology that they have is really giving them piecemeal slices of their data. And really then they have to go to IT and say, hey, can you get me this information from this technology, or what about this other slice of data? So kind of being held back by that tech means that now the data they get isn't timely, so they can't act on it, or it's already outdated, and the data itself isn't accurate. So then they're emailing the same customer twice, for instance. So really what that forces them to do is build their entire strategy around the technology that they have available and the data that is available within that tech. So we're really seeing that struggle right now for marketers across the different industries they work in.
It's interesting. We see it a lot at MessageGears as well. Since I've been with the firm for about 2.5 years now, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with brands. There's so many of them get to the root of this issue that we're talking about here today, which is this notion of a single source of truth for the customer. Brands are frankly really struggling with this, and many of them have a vision for a system of record for the customer. But others are dealing with many, many different data silos, and frankly, there's a lot of frustration out there. Cierra, I think you have an example in this next slide of kind of a hypothetical situation. You want to talk us through this and what this one's all about?
Yeah, so really I think that what's happening for marketers right now is happening across different industries and different departmental focuses. And really the idea is that you're seeing a lot of new technologies crop up that solve a single problem, and they're great at that, at solving that one problem. But what you're losing is the big picture and the connectivity between all of those different individual really great softwares. And so really that growing number of tools in the landscape is making it harder to put that big picture together. So here what you see on the slide is we had a client who has e-commerce data, and it connected perfectly to their email service platform. They were able to send great emails when people made purchases and have great strategies around that. However, what they weren't able to do well was integrate their loyalty data. So now I don't want to know just when somebody purchased something. I want to know if that person is a repeat purchaser who is my star player for my loyalty program, so I can treat them differently than I do the everyday buyer. And that connection was limited with the softwares that they were using. But then when you start talking about third-party data for a lot of retailers, the problem is that the third-party data is in all different shapes and forms. You often get an Excel file from your distributor that has kind of a high-level aggregated view, and you don't understand enough about your customers to market to them personally from both their buying online and their buying in-store from those distributors. So then you get this disconnected picture, and you can't really target them in a nice personalized way. And that really has a lot to do with the fact that there's too many tools out there and no one tool or software that can do it, everything.
Got it. Sounds pretty painful. One other piece of data from some of the studies that MessageGears has been doing, it really just kind of confirms everything that Cierra and I have been talking about. For everyone who's struggling with personalization from our surveys and studies, they also say their data is siloed, right? So they're directly related to one another, I think all of us are asking here, or should be asking, well, what's the answer? What's a roadmap, and what's a strategy, and what's a plan, and what's a framework to solve some of this friction to deliver against the expectation of the consumer? So what we're seeing increasingly with brands who have millions or tens of millions of customers is they're planning for or investing in modern data platforms to enable those exceptional experiences. So really, we're talking about the system of record to provide that frictionless single source of truth to enable very sophisticated segmentation and personalization across all channels. Cierra, what are you seeing companies get out of a modern data platform?
Well, we see a lot of marketers that know that there's issues with the data and that they can't get it in the way they want it to act on the strategies that they've laid out. But I think something that we see people struggle with is communicating kind of the benefits to get budget to really fund having that modern data platform. And I think really the biggest thing is, and everyone's heard it before, is having that single view of a customer. More often than not, when you have all these different systems, Jane, from the email example, exists in all of them in different ways, different email addresses, different last names, all those things. So it's really understanding Jane across platforms. And that's a conversation that's been happening in this industry forever. But having a single platform that you can have that kind of single source of truth not only gets you things like clean data from that single view of a customer, but it also allows you to do really smart improvements on your customer segmentation, and it allows you to automate a lot of that process. So again, we had a client who just said, hey, can you deliver me those email addresses that are the repeat customers who haven't bought in 12 weeks? Can you just do that every single day and feed out the ones that we've already emailed recently? So those kind of automations really focus the marketers on asking more why questions and coming up with more strategies. And really all of that sets you up for the things you're hearing in the field, like data science, machine learning, AI, and really even beyond that, you're able to do really clean visual reports that show your marketing ROI and help you march against those KPIs. So there's a lot of different benefits you can get from that modern data platform, but it's really just setting up that foundational build for you. The thing is, too, when you're looking at these platforms, there's a couple different options. And I think one of the things with this webinar is, how do you get started? That's the benefit that you communicate, but where do you even start looking? And I think something that we've been asked a lot by our clients is what types of platforms are available and how do you navigate everything that's out there? And I think it really comes down to the simplification is really the custom versus package concept. So right now you hear a lot of technologies out there, and CDP is just an example, a customer data platform. But you have these tools that say, hey, I have all these pre-built connectors that are available between your different technologies. So I can connect your e-commerce with your email marketing platform, for instance. But the problem with those platforms is that you get stuck in whatever connectors are made available to you, and you have to pay per connector. So that's kind of where the long term, those packaged platforms can become a little bit limiting for marketers and end up being that slice of the data. So something that we recommend in terms of that longer term growth extensibility is going the custom route. So you define what you want your data to look like, what questions you want to answer, and if you have all these different technologies you want to pull data in from, you can do that. The difference between the two really is just kind of an immediate quick win with that package with some long-term issues that you might have to end up building something on top of, or kind of a longer upfront build with that custom build, but then it's easier to scale in the long term. Something that we do see, though, that a lot of customers have is they'll start with that packaged customer data platform, and we're just taking Segment here, the logo on the right-hand side, as an example. They'll take Segment and they'll say, hey, can I get all of my customer data points? Can I get all the events that happen for my customers and collect them in this tool because it's just quick and easy and it plugs into my existing tech? But then they say, well, now I can't plug in all of my different product tags that I want to integrate that with. So now how about I send all of that data to a database like Snowflake, which is the one in the middle on the custom here, and really marry all of that out with the rest of my business data so I can control and customize my data with specific business rules. So really what you'll see is on the next slide, we kind of come into these companies and they have a lot of technologies like we've been mentioning. So all those same logos you'll see distributed here. And you have things like, again, Amazon for your distributor data, 3PL for your inventory data, and then obviously you have MessageGears in the middle for your email service platform. So we walk into these companies and they have all of these applications talking to each other. So each line of communication that you see drawn here is making it harder and harder to tell the story, and every single line makes it more likely that your data will be inaccurate or they'll be synced up at different times. So then we hear a lot of frustration around being able to market to these customers in real time, which is really where the world's going. And on the next slide, what you see is what we try to help customers really think about is you want to take all of those data sources and you want to streamline them through one process that's completely automated so your marketers aren't gathering and cleaning data, and instead, again, focusing on strategy, focusing on acting on that data. So really what you do to build that foundation is take all of your data sources and point them one direction, move all of that data one direction to somewhere where you store it, any kind of database. And then from that database, you're able to really push it to all of your different platforms. So if you think about Google AdWords, how nice would it be to be able to deliver very specific messages to know exactly what to act on. Same thing goes for your email marketing platform. So you'll actually notice MessageGears is on the data sources side and the act side. And the reason why is because if you have some data that's saying, hey, if I sent out all these campaigns, I want to know my open rates. I want to know all of those analytics. But then I want to be able to feed that back into my store area here, into my database, where I understand not only the customer analytics in terms of my email marketing, but also my POS, my e-com, my product data, my third-party data, even things like weather and demographics, and get bigger and better insights, and then act on those things again, and continue that cycle to get better and better at your marketing message. So what you'll see is once you are able to actually act on that message, then you're able to do these kinds of things. This message that we talked about in the beginning of the webinar. This Laura Jane message only knew that Laura Jane purchased that favorite foundation regularly every 6 weeks because we had a complete picture of who she was, what she did, what the products were, and did a lot of cleanup to get there. So this is the outcome, or one of the outcomes, of being able to have that steady foundation. But really, the key to having this kind of personalization is to know what actions to take today. And so really the idea is when we go into these clients that have this issue, they all want to know how to get started. And really the first thing that we recommend, and this is whether or not you're using consultants or doing this internally yourself, is look at the ways that your data or technology is restricting your marketing efforts today. Write those down so you really understand the use cases for a data platform or any data cleanup. The next thing is determine who owns the data in your organization and discuss where you can improve access to that data today. What's easy? What's something really quick that maybe tech can do to make that data available to you faster? And what are some longer term things that are already on their roadmap that you can start helping communicate messages on? Really, it's bringing together departments to fight this common goal of having a good, clean data set. The third thing is pretty obvious, but you want to prioritize these issues. I think the biggest thing is, executives, no matter what department, want to see, hey, if I march toward this one thing, can I have a timeline, a budget, and a team that's going to get started, and can I understand the ROI on investing in that? And I think once you're able to lay these things out, involve other departments, and say, hey, this is the one use case I'm going to walk towards. So in this example, it's been customer segmentation, being able to better target that customer. Then you're able to show them that end product, that tangible goal. So that's really the 3 action steps that we recommend in order to get started. And then at that point, the question may be, well, how can Aptitive or MessageGears help with that? And really, I think this is something you absolutely can do internally and get started with and list those things out. It's a really great conversation to have. And once you've had that conversation cross-departmentally, Aptitive really comes in usually to do a free marketing data strategy whiteboarding session where we meet with all those departments, all the people you gathered on that team, and we say, okay, can we together create a roadmap to getting better data? How can we lay that out for you? How can we talk you through some of your issues today? Can we ideate on new ways to approach this? And maybe some of them are just quick wins that you guys do internally, and maybe some of them are longer term builds. And how do you weigh those different priorities? So that's typically what we do as an organization to kind of help in these scenarios.
That was awesome, Cierra. Thank you so much. And then I'll just chime in here from a MessageGears perspective. What makes us unique as a platform is we're actually purpose-built for brands that have crossed the chasm and have this single source of truth, typically in the form of a customer data warehouse. So we're very capable and agile in our ability to directly connect to that customer data warehouse and enable any brand to experience our technology and the frictionless agility that it provides in terms of communicating relevant, right time, right place, right message to your ever-demanding consumer. We do have time for questions, though, if you want to stick with us. And, you know, I'll say one thing from my side, just listening to Cierra talk, you know, it does seem clear to me that, you know, if you're stuck with what I think of as really a peer-to-peer architecture. So if you remember that spaghetti diagram that Cierra had up on her screen a couple slides back, you know, if you have that kind of peer-to-peer architecture, you know, you really need to think about evolving your technology stack. You know, otherwise it's truly holding your marketing back. I think you want to ask your tech team to look at kind of the customer data architecture that you have today and strategize on how to move forward with you, and you know, even try whiteboarding out every system that touches customer data and the customer experience. And if it starts to look like a big tangled mess, you know, it's definitely holding you back. And you know, probably the only way to really solve it is to go back to square one and come up with a strategy and talk to a firm like Aptitive to kind of give you some guidance. I do have two questions for you, Cierra, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
You know, we had some logos up on some of the earlier slides that talked about kind of the modern data platform, modern data warehouse ecosystem. Are there any key differences there that folks should be aware of across the Google BigQueries and Snowflakes and Redshifts and Microsoft SQL Azures, or is it highly nuanced? You know, any commentary on that?
So yes, there's always commentary on that, and that's probably a whole other 30-minute webinar. I'm happy to chat through those things. I think a lot of it, though, comes down to, the stack that you have today. So if you hear around the office that people are using Microsoft or Google Cloud Platform as opposed to just Google Suite tools, or if they're using AWS, then typically people like to stay within the same stack. I would also say there's a lot more technical differences. So it's really more when you're starting to talk to your developers and your IT stack, there's some slight pricing differences, but I think that it's more usage and the way you build things and kind of what you're more familiar with. So questions that we will ask tech resources is more around like, hey, what languages are you comfortable with? How have you typically architected things in the past? What are your skill sets? What's the staff that's going to support this? And honestly, a lot of it is area-based. So can you hire for these skill sets in your area? How easy is that? So it's a big, long conversation, of course, but happy to have those offline as well.
Great, super helpful. Another one that came in was just the notion of like, you know, where do I start? You know, how do I crawl, walk, run on kind of modern data infrastructure? Is there any sort of low-hanging fruit that a brand can start with, or that you've seen across the customers that you've worked with in terms of where to start?
I think there's a couple different ways to start depending on what your goal is. If we take the better targeted marketing, let's just say better targeted email marketing, and let's say that your issue is that you have customers that are just email addresses to you, and you haven't really defined who those people are. I think the biggest thing is clean up your data, or identify, let's even take it a step back, identify what data needs to be cleaned up. So in this case, it's, hey, I have customer email addresses, but I really don't know who they are. I don't know if I'm emailing the same person. So then that's kind of your first step is like, hey, I'm going to address these customer email address issues. The second step, kind of as we talked about in the action item slide, is where is that data coming from? So let's just say I have data from my loyalty program telling me, hey, these email addresses are this level of loyalty. And then I have email addresses coming from my e-com system saying this email address is what purchased X, Y, and Z. So can you start tying that out? Can we decide that, hey, actually my e-commerce system, that's my source of truth. So very simple way to do customer data management or to understand a single customer is to say, let's just take all the email addresses from the e-commerce system. Let's try to find the matches in the loyalty system. If they match, great. Let's put that information together. If we don't match, then do we prioritize the e-com system? Because that's my single source of truth. It's a very simple example, and it's not the long-term solution, but little things like that allow you now a clean email address list. Then maybe you want to get a clean first and last name. Then you want to get a clean demographic. So it's kind of expanding from there and understanding those priorities.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. I cannot thank Cierra enough for her insights and knowledge. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to doing it again soon and to seeing all of you in a future webinar from MessageGears. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, guys.